Armless martyrs, dancing shadows, and the mind of a serial killer. These horror movies are as moving as they are macabre. What if a horror movie took place inside a death metal album cover? That's the question asked by Panos Cosmatos' 2018 cult hit Mandy, a revenge film that features an acid-fueled cult, a gang of motorcycle Cenobites, and one of the longest chainsaws you've ever seen. Nicolas Cage and Andrea Riseborough play Red and Mandy, a warm and loving couple who are at peace in the woods with their books and their heavy metal albums. With the aid of a gang of knife-encrusted demonic biker monsters, cult leader Linus Roach kidnaps Mandy in the hopes of indoctrinating her. After the kidnapping, even more horrible things begin to transpire, not the least of which is an unexpected visit from the Cheddar Goblin. To save his partner, Red must smelt his own axe and set out on a quest of blood-soaked revenge. Tranquil in its first half and blisteringly insane in its second, the smeared heavy metal visuals of Mandy are some of the most exciting in recent memory. This is Nick Cage's world. We're just living in it.
I'm your god now.
Tarsum Singh was known as the director of striking commercials and music videos prior to his feature debut with 2000's The Cell. This thrilling horror stars Jennifer Lopez as a psychologist who uses a machine to project her consciousness into the minds of others. The device comes in handy when an apprehended serial killer falls into a coma, and the cops need to locate one of his still-living kidnapped victims. Lopez has to enter his mind, decipher his psychology, and locate his victim. Unfortunately, the subconscious mind of a serial killer is a swirling nightmare full of impossible rooms and torture devices not seen since the Middle Ages. What's more, when someone is a mere disembodied consciousness, the torture can extend far past the point of what is possible for the human body to withstand. The Cell is a legitimate phantasmagoria of horror, an illuminated manuscript of pain. No film has a production design quite like this, providing viewers with unique and nightmarish imagery they won't soon forget. Dario Argento's 1977 film Suspiria remains one of the best horror films ever made, even if it doesn't make much logical sense. Set in a German dance academy, an aspiring ballerina finds that witches run the school and are up to something mysterious and sinister. The saturated colors, overstuffed production design, cinematography by Luciano Tovoli, and unique character deaths make Suspiria a punch to the eyeballs, even if it's a little disorienting. Just as effective and terrifyingly gorgeous, Luca Guadagnino's 2018 remake takes the same premise and setting, but expands into the realm of German politics in the late 1970s.
There are two things that dance can never be again: beautiful and cheerful.
Less colorful, but more atmospheric and textured. The camera work by Sayambu Mukdeepram is second to none. Both these frightening flicks might be beautiful, but they're certainly not cheerful. Lucas Feigelfeld's Hagazussa, A Heathen's Curse, was one of the best films of 2017, and it may very well be celebrated as a folk horror classic before too long. Set in the Swiss Alps sometime in the 15th century, Hagazussa tells the story of a young woman and her harrowing experiences of religious rejection, abuse, and sexual persecution. While she remains distant from most people, protagonist Albrun is constantly subject to an overhanging cloud of anti-Semitism and sexism throughout the film, which climaxes in a particularly shocking act of violence. Hagazussa is set largely in the wilderness, and cinematographer Mariel Baquero makes the entire Earth look like a hazy, inhospitable place knotted with roots and strands of unknowable wildlife. This environment seems specifically designed to reduce once living, vibrant beings into pustule-encrusted corpses, and eventually mere piles of bones. The firelight is not warm or inviting, but repellent and wicked. This is a beautiful world you do not want to inhabit. In their ever-so-finite wisdom, Paramount Pictures elected to release Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow in mid-November 1999. Given its spook house tone, ominous jack-o'-lantern, ghostly story, and terrifying headless horseman, Sleepy Hollow most certainly deserved a pre-Halloween release, based on the classic Washington Irving story. Sleepy Hollow reimagined Ichabod Crane as a curious and cowardly police detective who uses novel scientific forensics to catch perpetrators. In Sleepy Hollow, however, his science comes up short when he realizes a headless assassin is contributing to an Old Town rivalry.
That's the problem. He was dead to begin with.
Cinematographer Emanuel Lubezki turned Sleepy Hollow into a gorgeous gray wasteland where the brightest source of light is the young Katrina Van Tassel, and the only color comes from her magical pink chalk and the red blood that spurts out of the town's numerous corpses. In homage to Hammer horror movies, with a cameo from Christopher Lee to boot, Sleepy Hollow is a haunting picture of the highest order, and it should be celebrated as the Halloween classic it was meant to be. As a young man, Chilean auteur Alejandro Jodorowsky sought to become an artist and change the world. To this day, moviegoers are better off because of it. Jodorowsky had been making films and theater productions since the 1950s, but he burst onto the scene in 1970 with the release of El Topo, the first proper midnight movie. Jodorowsky followed El Topo up with 1973's The Holy Mountain, one of the largest and most ambitious art films ever made. In 1989, Jodorowsky tapped into his childhood experiences as a circus performer to make Santa Sangre, a surrealist Freudian nightmare. Full of circus imagery, blood, knives, and violence, Santa Sangre tells the story of a young man named Phoenix, played by Jodorowsky's son Axel, who finds himself torn between the influence of his father and mother. It just so happens that his father is a knife thrower and his mother is the founder of a cult built around an armless martyr. When his mother becomes armless herself, Phoenix serves as her arms as part of a mesmerizing pantomime performance. Eventually, however, the lines between real life and the stage begin to blur. No one can stuff a frame with dazzling visual information like Jodorowsky, and no one will leave Santa Sangre without being terrifyingly dazzled. Based on the book by Jerzy Kosinski, Václav Marul's 2019 Misery Fest The Painted Bird is one of the bleakest films ever released. Set somewhere in rural Eastern Europe right at the outbreak of World War II, The Painted Bird follows the misadventures of a young boy as the world repeatedly grinds his face into the dirt. He accidentally burns down his own home. He is abused by every adult he sees, and he bears witness to acts of violence no human ought to see. One day, he discovers that if one smears paint on a bird, the other birds in its flock will peck it to death. Stained by the spirit of the war, the entire countryside has begun to reflect this proverbial facet of nature. Vladimir Smutinet's shimmering black and white photography is museum-worthy, and the hazy light denotes that life and color are gone from this world. The visuals are breathtaking, even as pain and suffering mounts. There is no levity, joy, or catharsis to be had in The Painted Bird, and yet there is something undeniably exhilarating that echoes through the desolation. Director, producer, writer, editor, production designer, costume designer, and composer, Anna Biller clearly loves the chintzy Eurosleaze horror movies of the late 1960s. Her 2016 film, The Love Witch, is one of the more authentic B-movie recreations to come out of the neo-grindhouse movement. Considering the quality of the light, the makeup, the music, the sex and nudity, The Love Witch could have been released in theaters in 1969 with only the smallest adjustments. The story is a retro free love parable. Elaine is a witch who likes to get around, but also dreams of having a husband. She has sex on her terms, and true to the title, men are constantly falling in love with her. This can be a problem when she doesn't care enough to keep them around.
Men are like children. They're very easy to please, as long as we give them what they want.
This is a delightfully stylized, sexy little romp that fans of schlock and Italian horror will be sure to enjoy. E. Elias's Marriage's 1989 experimental film Begotten begins with an extended sequence of a masked figure in a rundown hovel, seemingly unable to control his limbs, steadily slicing out his own internal organs with a straight razor. This is God, and he's dead now. From his remains spring a masked nature figure, Mother Earth. Mother Earth becomes impregnated with a child who is born an adult, but also lacks the ability to control its limbs and must be dragged around on a rope. This is Son of Earth. When these deities encounter mysterious robed figures, they are attacked and destroyed, leaving God and nature dead, and severing humanity's connection to the natural world. Filmed with no dialogue, Begotten was shot on grainy, scratched 16mm film, making its events appear impossibly ancient. A rare film that looks like it was shot by the very antediluvian entities it depicts. Begotten is a formative experience that remains at a distance, and yet it captures a concept so viscerally close to something abstract and primal inside of humankind. It takes a certain kind of eye to make a film like a dream, and Carl Theodor Dreyer had that talent all the way back in 1932, when he made Vampyr. The film follows no recognizable logic. Characters all seem to be in a constant state of fear, even when merely walking along a trail to a remote castle in the woods, though the image of an old man wielding a scythe might have something to do with it. In Vampyr, a lonely traveler spends the night at an inn, where a stranger appears in his room and gives him a package. It is not to be opened until the stranger dies. The traveler then treks out into the wilderness and finds a place where shadows dance and defy the people they are attached to. He later sees himself in a coffin, and the audience is left to wonder whether he's being buried alive or if his spirit has left his body. These questions are raised alongside strange and terrifying events, such as a young woman being kidnapped. The simple explanation for the cacophony is that the film takes place in a dream. Rudolf Matte's camera work shapes light and scenery in such a way that the glittering world feels slightly askew, blurring the line between dreams, nightmares, and real-world terror.